I will try to explain the mechanics and provide tips necessary for finishing the game on the hardest difficulty. Any story elements are in the appropriate section, and there is a spoiler warning. Let's go. So firstly, general tips for buildings. You require 3 stockpiles per sector, 1 food, 1 alloy, 1 circuit. You should set limits at 90, 25 and 1 respectively. Food is never to be set to the maximum amount due to logistics bugging out. Alloys need empty space since deconstructing a building requires depositing, and circuits can even be set to 0 and only requested when in use. To that end, you can combine the alloy and circuit stockpiles by setting it to alloys, then circuits, and once delivered, back to alloys. Remember, cut power to buildings not in use to reduce both electrical load and the strain on the working population. On that subject, know that accidents are not preventable. However, if you wish to limit them to injuries only, ensure working conditions are optimal by having more than 10% of the required workforce in the sectors. Sector specializations are of many types. You have to build buildings of the appropriate type to progress towards unlocking it, represented by these icons here. You can see all of them on the screen, however the important ones are space, food, and recycling. Early game specializations will be incredibly hard to achieve. Do not try to do so when you only have 1 or 2 open sectors. Remember that the more are unlocked, the more repairs are needed. Sectors require batteries to function while moving. I have built to tier 3 batteries in each sector, however 1 single battery would have likely sufficed. 1 legislative strengthening center, 1 infirmary per 150 working pops, 1 DLS center, and 1 fire station later on seems to be enough to cover all, until the arena and health center are unlocked and replace some of these buildings. The DLS allows access to policies of which the propaganda, food, and waste are good to change. Working hours should only be changed if you can afford the stability and never in the space sector as it affects repairs. Repairs are to be turned off when ship hull is too high as efficiency goes down. This is really important as the drain of alloys caused by repairs on higher difficulties is significant. Do not forget to turn it back on though. Approximately 1 more EVA airlock needs to be built every 2 chapters, excluding the one built at the start. The Waste Treatment Center is a great building which, unless in need for alloys to repair, should be set to electronics, which is often the bottleneck. Use set electronics to also upgrade domotic quarters for at least 50% of the population of a sector to ensure massive stability bonuses. The rest of the population can be housed in whatever. When it comes to science, I could give you some pointers, however I have seen that people playthroughs vary wildly, and therefore you should pick what suits your playstyle. Survive the early game and you will be okay late game. Just know there is enough research in this game to unlock all you want. Science comes from your tech lab, which should be upgraded and running at all times, and also from your science ship. Let's talk about interacting with the system. Early game you should have 1 science, mining, and transport ships. Later on, however, the ratio is 1 science, 2 mining, and 3 transport. Once the science ship is done with all points of interest, it can be unassigned, not dismantled, and replaced with 1 more transport ship. You'll spend time in this sector past the necessary amount simply to gather resources and generate science. Make sure to mark resources in dangerous areas to be avoided, unless the tech to protect the ships is researched, in which case you are free to do as you please. There is a debuff that hits for delaying, but it is a singular non-stacking event that disappears once you jump. I will not cover points of interest and their choices here due to the fact that in this regard the wiki is extensive and presents information better than a YouTube video. Note that even though chapters 4 and 5 are not shown in the drop-down, they do in fact exist. Use the search function. There is a warning when performing a jump about ships having to return. It is safe to ignore, it has been patched since. Make sure the transport ships have a place to deposit resources, otherwise you are wasting time and alloys in the sector. Your ship can move. Utilize this whether to shorten travel distances for your ships or to help them avoid hazardous areas. Before we begin talking about things that can be considered spoilers, I can tell you that polymer and colonists become very important in the last 2 chapters. Make sure to at least research technology regarding them. Warning, spoilers ahead. Prologue, nothing much to talk about. Chapter 1, again just get all resources and move on. Chapter 2, well here we have 2 problematic areas. The larger one on the left only affects the Tiqunn, while the one on the right only affects your ships. You will be required to enter the area on the left to do some story. Stock up on some alloys and ensure you have your second EVA airlock built. Chapter 3 is tricky. The big area is moving per point of interest finished. I suggest avoiding P42 as that makes the hazard move twice. Once all other areas are done, you will have to move through. Until then, stay put. This, for me, has been the only time I have required fire stations. Do not worry about missed resources, as by the end of the chapter you will have access to all of it. Chapter 4, one hazard area, just avoid it, or research the necessary tech. Do not investigate the Piranesi until everything else has been dealt with. Then make sure research regarding it is completed, and stock up on polymer. Build counter-missiles and dodge drone swarms. It will attempt to hack your mess halls, maintain calm, and merely restart power to them. At some point your scientists come up with a plan. When sending the science ship to execute the mission, build a new one and preserve the original's level. Chapter 5 will see us fight it again. Missiles counters necessary. Build batteries, train colonists, and UN. There are two endings, the obvious one, the Ashtangites, or scout the planet Romulus, disable the AI, and follow the objectives. That is all I have to offer. Enjoy the game.